My dad was her brother. So that makes Bonnie my aunt. Okay? There's about 22 years difference between Bonnie and my dad, Tom Harlan. Then we married brothers. So she's also my sister-in-law. We grew up together. We went through high school all together. In every grade we were together. And we live almost side by side. Even now. Even now. Never had a fight. I wonder why. Because I was going to win anyway. No, I just went along with it. Where were you born?
I was born at home in Coopers, West Virginia.
Yeah, and let me add that Dr. Luttrell was her doctor. Dr. Luttrell lived here in Bramwell, so she's one of Dr. Luttrell's babies.
And he delivered hundreds. Yeah, I was going to say, I've seen hundreds of babies, and Bonnie was one of them, but not you.
No, I was born in Bluefield. That's okay. I was in the hospital.
Where did you grow up?
Part of the time in Coopers, and then finished growing up on Bramwell Hill.
How old were you when you moved to Bramwell Hill?
Probably about 7.
Yeah, now I grew up in Coopers for a while. My mother met my dad during, after World War II. She was from Chicago. She came here and she was in shock, I'm sure, to have a coal miner for a husband. She was very dissatisfied. We moved many, many times by the time I was 7, for sure. So I lived in Coopers for a short period of time and lived in Bluewell for a short period of time, lived in Bluefield 2 or 3 different times, then came back and lived on Bramwell Hill a couple of times, and finally wound up on Bramwell Hill when I was about 6.
Can you tell me about your earliest memories growing up?
We lived in Coopers, and we used to catch a train and come to Bramwell to visit my brother, who lived in one of the apartments here in town, beside the jailhouse. Yeah, which when I ever got in trouble, Mom always threatened me.
Put me in the jail. So
that was my first memory. We just played. We just had a good childhood.
Was there a lot of other kids around it to play?
Bramwell Hill, there was a lot of kids.
And everybody just came together?
Mm-hmm. We'd go down at the meet in the road. Everybody get sort of around this one spot. We'd all meet in the evening and jump rope, play hide and seek.
There was, it's where the company store is. And so all the kids gathered there. Across the railroad line, there was an old hotel. And there was a black family that lived in that old hotel. And then there were a couple other houses down from that. So when Mama, from the black family, she called her children in to come and eat, well, we'd go too. We'd all just go and eat right with them. Yeah, and it was a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful experience. Although I have to tell you, we did run away one time.
It was her fault.
We decided we wanted to see what was on top of the mountain. And so it was an area that was cut above the tunnel that's still there today, the tunnel that's there. And so we just decided we'd walk up there and see what was on top of the mountain.
I think we were 5 and 6.
Yeah, we were 5, maybe younger than 5, 4 and 5.
Just me and Betty.
And we couldn't figure out. We saw these little tiny things down at the bottom at the roads, and they were just waving and yelling. And we couldn't figure out what was going on. And they were, of course, doing it to us.
They tell you to come.
Telling us to come.
We did get in trouble.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. We did get in trouble.
And which hill was it? In
Coopers and above the Grant beds.
Yeah.
Oh, that is a big hill.
Yeah. Then another thing, and I'll tell you about the you said stolen, but we did not steal anything.
Charged.
We charged. Bonnie's dad was Oscar Levi Hartman, and he started working at Mill Creek Coal and Coke Company before he was 5. I have documentation where he worked at Caswell Creek in March of 1902 when he would turn 6 in April of that year. And he helped build a company store there in Coopers. And so I asked my granny one day, I said, Gran, tell me about the company store. She said, oh, it was wonderful. She said, it really was wonderful. You could buy anything you wanted, and it had the best fabric in the world. And so she went on to tell about you could buy chickens, or you could buy, of course, milk or anything. But she said, I had the best butter And my job was to sell my butter to Mr. O'Neill, who was in charge of the company store. So living near the company store, we often would go in. Of course, we're poor. We're coal miners' children, and so we're poor, and we go in and we'd watch all the stuff going on. So we decided, the brazen hussies that we were, and 4 years old, maybe 4 or 5, we decided we'd get us a Reese cup. So we go and we charge the candy bar onto my granny's ticket. Now, in between the company store and the church, which is right beside of it, there was a large stand of purple flock. We took our little ware, and we got in between that flock, and we measured so carefully, We sat there and ate our candy bar, just happy as larks. Never told a soul. Never. My granny was about 90-ish, and we decided it was time we better fess up. So we went and said, Graham, we've got to tell you something. So we told her about our candy bar excursion, and she said, girls, I've known it all along because it was on my bill, and I've been waiting all these years for you to tell us.
And it took that many years.
That many years was to get brave enough to tell her. Yeah.
So, and where y'all were, there was a lot of other coal miner families, I guess, too, right?
They were most all in, and they were company officials. Of course, you had the Cooper house, and then you had the house beside of it that the Odies live in now. Those were company officials. And then the blue house that the Vaughns live in now, that was company officials. But for the most part, it was mostly coal miners.
And they all had kids. They all had kids. As far as like kids down there.
We just played and had the best time in the world. We learned to roller skate at the company store. Roller skating. Had a wonderful childhood there. The McFadden family lived. Do you remember their house apartment like? And Mrs. McFadden, she would take in laundry, and we would go. They had a girl our age, and we would go to their house and we'd play hide and seek in all of those brand new cleaned clothes. Here we are diving into the clothes that Mrs. McFadden had laundered.
Mm-hmm. Did she ever catch you and fuss at you?
She really didn't fuss a whole lot. Not a whole lot. Every once in a while she would, but she knew if we came, we were going to be playing. And we would sit on, remember when we did the clover necklaces? Mm. We'd sit on the bank and we'd just sit there and make clover necklaces. You take the little clover that grows in the grass and you tie them all together and you make crowns. And
that was time consuming too, to tie them all together.
Yeah, because we didn't have, children today have a tremendous amount of toys to play with. We didn't have that. So we were outside being creative, very creative. Yeah. We played house. Now we had a chapel. We had a smokehouse. You all know what a smokehouse is, where meat was taken in and, they would tenderize it for winter and everything. But through the years, it became a storage building. So we decided with our friend Louise McFadden, who was our age, who also had moved from Coopers to Bramwell Hill, we decided to do a playhouse. And we moved furniture and we carried curtains. We did all kinds of stuff, had a real playhouse in the playhouse. And then we did do plays. Yeah, we did plays.
You charge them a penny.
All the neighborhood kids would come. Yep. And Benny was the director. And we'd serve food.
Yeah. Was there anything unusual that you liked to eat when you were children?
In playing house, we didn't have a lot of extra food at all. But we would sneak down into the kitchen and we would get dry spaghetti and we would put it on our bread and we would have spaghetti sandwiches. That's what we had for our ketchup sandwich. And we'd have ketchup sandwiches. And then in the spring, when fruit was out, strawberries, we'd run and get some fresh strawberries and run home and mash them and put them on some bread. Where we lived, there were a lot of fruit trees. Not various, I'd say 4 or 5 different types of apples. We had cherries, and over at Granddaddy's, he had peaches and pears and more apples. So we had a wide variety of fruit all the time. And then Granddaddy raised chickens, and our job was to go and catch a chicken, and we'd have to bring chickens home for Sunday dinner. So Granddaddy would tie a string around the chicken legs, and we would carry chickens under our arms like this
Very get loose sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes it gets loose, flying up like it's flapping in the wind, and you're still holding on to them for dear life. Yes, because we also had, on top of the mountain, we also had chickens too. So he would transfer chickens from his house to ours. So, yeah, we had, food-wise, though, other than the duck, I remember the duck.
We had it for Thanksgiving.
We had it for Thanksgiving one year. I thought that was different. But typical farm country food.
Spaghetti sandwich.
Spaghetti sandwich, yeah. Corn, he would raise fields of corn, and our job, of course, was to hoe all of that. And potatoes, if you chopped one potato, he'd be on your head, and he was, he said, it's wasteful. Don't, somebody was digging potatoes, don't waste the potatoes. And yeah.
They kept y'all busy, didn't they?
Yeah. That's what I always say, kids need a cornfield. Because if you're working, you don't have time to get in trouble. Yeah, we were always busy. We always had work to do. In Coopers, there was a little grocery store run by Tom O'Neill. So Granddaddy decided he could trade eggs for the wares at the grocery store. So who had to deliver the eggs? And my two brothers. And we were like 9 and 10, carrying eggs through the mountain, going downhill, through a cemetery, crossing a railroad track, going all the way down. And that hill is a steep hill. Yeah, I walked it. So, but we had to carry eggs, and he would know if we broke one egg because he couldn't get that extra can of corn or whatever it was he wanted. And so we had to be very careful. I mean, kids in the cemetery where there are snakes and...
Well, and if it was snowing and icy or something,
we still had
to break eggs once in a while.
I don't think we ever did. Because we were afraid to. Because we were scared of him too. But then he always got a little bag. It was about this big of penny candy. And we had to drag all these canned things back up the hill to Granddaddy's, and he'd give us a piece of candy. It was our pay.
Going back up, that was right. That's a big hill.
Yeah, it was.
Is there at least a beaten path to where it was easier?
Well, we had made the path because we had to do it at least once a week. We were going down taking eggs. Yeah.
So, and were there any gathering spots where all the teenagers went, or all the kids, after school, or?
Well, most of the kids that gathered would be at the corner shop, but we never got to.
Y'all didn't get to go.
There's always once, in a great with teenagers, but most time no. We gathered on Bramwell Hill, and even as young teenagers, we gathered on Bramwell Hill. We would play games like, of course, we played tag and jump rope and hide and seek and tin can alley, and we played those games. And we would have kids from Hunkholler coming up. That's the backside coming up, and they played with us till dark. We had weenie rows. Yeah, and that would be gathering of everybody up on the hill. Everybody would gather together. We had corn shuckings. We gathered together when they killed hogs. Helped this one didn't, but I did. I helped them with the meat of the hogs. Apple butter making time, we gathered together and helped peel in the winter. And then in the winter, we would all gather together and sleigh ride. We'd stay out all day long. We'd frozen like crazy, but it didn't matter. We'd stay and sleigh ride with everybody. And sometimes the adults would come out and sleigh ride too. Yeah, so we had a wonderful, wonderful childhood. I mean, we really, really did. Poor as could be, and yet we had a wonderful.
How we didn't think about being poor. You were having fun. Just had everything you needed as far as food and clothing.
I mean, we didn't have indoor plumbing. We didn't have telephone. We had one little light hanging in the ceiling that you had to turn on. But we had a wonderful, wonderful childhood. Yeah, it really was a wonderful childhood.
Did y'all go to church when you were growing up? Is there any particular church you went to?
Yeah, when we lived in Coopers, we went to the Methodist church there in Coopers, went to the Sunday school class there, and got a good background that way. And then when we moved up on Bramwell Hill, most of the people on Bramwell Hill went to the Pilgrim Holiness Church. And so we went to that church as well. Most of the time we walked. It's about 1.5 miles from Bramwell Hill, but we would walk. It was fine until it was a rainy day. So oftentimes we didn't go when the weather was bad. But you'd go to church and come out in the rain. And so we'd have to walk home. I'll never forget we had on high heels. You remember? We had high heels walking home in the rain. And we would, now you're going uphill all the way, Kirby Hill, all the way. And we would run to get under trees or in a garage. I mean, we were rich by the time we got there.
Is there a certain buildings or anything that you're, has to in the
corner shop, because
especially need them to you?
Yeah, it is. I remember when we was little, when my brother lived in town, sometimes we'd go get ice cream there. And then, of course, I worked there for 10 years, so it's just
Definitely the corner shop for you.
yeah, it's special for me.
I don't remember what year it was. You remember what year when we had polio shot?
Well, we were young, really young.
We were young. It was during America's polio vaccination. The whole nation was vaccinating everybody. And so one time we had vaccinations in the gymnasium at the school, but another time we came to the Masonic Temple, and it was packed. I mean, it was just packed with kids getting their vaccinations. So that was the first time I was ever in the Masonic. You could smell all the alcohol and, everything, and kids crying, screaming.
Yeah, but that was a sight.
Yeah, but, we were just marched in and it gets you and you march out.
The front of the Masonic Temple, was it a post office or is that?
It was a post office at one time. I have pictures of that.
Just the front part or the inside?
No, it just says Bramwell Post Office. And it's changed. That front part has changed quite a bit through the years. It's been a storage room. It's been a little gift shop. It's been an antique store. It's been a rummage place. So there's been also a ceramic shop in both sides. So it's changed through the years. I'll give you another little story about the one-room schoolhouse. It's not even there now, but there was a one-room schoolhouse. All right, we're up here. We're at the top of the hill. We're at the very top. We can see Pinnacle Rock State Park from the rock. We can see the rock from our house. That's how high we are up. And so right out from us was a one-room schoolhouse. And my dad went to that, and Norma did too. They went to that schoolhouse. And Dad said, because Aunt Chloe lived out here, his job was to leave the school and go to Aunt Chloe's and get water. And he'd have to bring it back to the school. And oftentimes he'd have to go get coal from school too. So we were level. And so we have a great commonality to that one-room school, because once they closed the school, they just left everything in the building. And so, kids know how to get into a building. And so we would go in, they left the piano and everything. We'd go in and we'd play the piano just like nobody, right on the chalkboard. And we remember we pushed the desks around. We did a race with the desks and everything. We had so much fun.
Just you two or all the
neighbor kids.
I bet that was fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
We had a good time in that school.
Yeah. So I was so sad one day. I was on the mountain and they were tearing it down. And I was so sad. I said, we had such great memories.
Even if it fell down or they tore it down. So they finally did.
It was beginning to fall. And so Roy Cook now owns it. David now owns it and owns that property. Yeah. So that was fun.
I bet I can see y'all in there playing.
So Dad went to that school until the 6th grade. And then he was paid to go to Bramwell School. And he was paid, I'm thinking it's 7 cents a mile to go to the school. He was paid to go to school, and he went to Bramwell School until the 8th grade.
So they paid kids on Bramwell Hill that were kind of away from the school, paid them to go
to school.
To entice them to come against it. They wanted students.
Growing up in that setting there in Coopers, when it came time to go to school, all the kids had to school. And I didn't get to go because I wasn't old enough. And I cried and cried and cried and cried and screamed bloody murder. Why can't I go to school? Everybody else goes to school. And so finally, my mother realized there was no stopping me. And so my first vague memory of the town of Bramwell was when, and I don't know how we got to Bramwell, whether we walked or whether we rode the train. I don't have any memory of that. But I remember we went in a store and I got a candy bar. And we walked. I remember walking from the grocery store up to the school, and I spilled candy on my brand new pretty dress. And my mother scolded me for that. And I thought, well, I'm doomed. I'm never going to get in school now because I bet on a dirty dress. But I was interviewed by the principal, and he said, if you don't cry, you can come to school, and you can bet your bottom dollar I didn't cry.
Yes, that's how it was. Right. If you didn't get to go, lots of you got to go. You're happy. Was that Mr. McCormick?
That was Mr. McCormick. Yeah.
And so you got to go, even though you're a year behind. Was that kindergarten?
No, she was in the same class as me.
Yeah.
Went to Dalton School.
We didn't have kindergarten.
Oh, so started out first grade.
Right. Yeah. And they put me in Miss Dunn's room first, and they realized that I could already read, so they moved me over into they put me in Miss Davis's room first, and then we went into Miss Dunn's room.
And then that was Virginia Davis, who lived here in Brown.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when you got to school, did y'all have a favorite teacher that you...
Our teachers were mean.
We were old maids, and they were mean. And we were scared to death. Yeah, we were. We were scared to have any favorites. So none of them, you just wanted to get last.
Well, I think Miss Bowman, she was good.
Yeah, I just thought that she was great.
Yeah.
But the others were old.
Yeah, they
Miss Alban taught a long time because I didn't taught fourth grade.
Yeah. Yeah, we had Miss Dunn in the first grade, and she was connected to the Bank of Bramwell. Some of her descendants lived in the Bank of Bramwell. She was older. I remember one thing that I loved that she always wanted us to do, and I loved it. She would bring out magazines. We didn't have magazines. We're poor kids. We didn't, but she would give us a magazine, and she said, "Okay, open the page and circle all the these, so circle all the ands." Do you remember that? Yeah. So I liked her for that reason because I never had held a magazine before. And then the second grade we had Miss Hill. And then by third grade, we had Miss Haynes.
She was mean.
Oh, yeah. She was really tough. Yeah. But I was a third grade champion of Jack Rocks. So I was really excited. The way the buses would arrive, we would have to stand in the halls and wait until the bell rang before we could go into the classroom. And so to make up time, we started doing games, and Jack Rocks at that time was the game. So we played Jack Rocks in the hallway. Yeah.
So when you lived on Bramwell Hill, did you ride the school bus, or did you have to walk to school?
We rode the school bus.
We rode the school bus all the way around.
On Coaldale side.
Yeah, we had to go by Coaldale.
So even going back and forth to school, did you come through Bramwell or notice the coming and goings of Bramwell? Or?
Yeah, we would ride through Bramwell because I distinctly remember from where the present firehouse is now, there would be there was a line of buildings. They were like apartment buildings. I remember seeing all of those. I remember the building across from the town hall, those buildings right there. You remember that too. But we would drive through Bramwell. It wasn't until, let's see, how old was I? I was a cheerleader. I don't know how I got elected, but I was a cheerleader and had to walk home from games. And every once in a while, somebody felt sorry for me, and I got invited to spend the night with somebody. And so that was my real experience of being in Bramwell, so to speak, because then I'd have to walk wherever those homes were. The school was very community-minded. If you wanted to play hooky, you couldn't get away with it because, everybody knew everybody else. And if Johnny was going down the road when he should have been in school, the principal would get called and he'd get Johnny's mother. And, so it was very close-knit because everybody knew everybody else. And, of course, that changes when you have a bigger environment. But the school was small and everybody just really knew everybody.
And I didn't realize it when I was in school because I was clueless, but our parents went to school together, just generational of going to the same school and kids in the same town, just generation after generation.
And that's what we argued for when consolidation was being discussed, because we realized, we took stats and realized that these kids graduating, over 70% of the students at Bramwell were going on to higher ed. No other school in the county could boast that at all. And we kept saying we are doing the right things for our kids. And at that time, it was before telemarketing or anything. There were there was no virtual learning or anything. and it was just coming in. And I personally went to the superintendent of schools, and I said, I don't understand why we cannot do teleconferencing and have students learn that way. And he said, but your school's not big enough for that. And yet, it's often the case. A child may want to take, say, Japanese, which my daughter did at Graham. She was the only student. And they did it by telecommunication.
Well, yeah. Yes, it was a hard battle trying to keep the school open. It was hard for years. I guess it's hard. It ended up not being able to be successful.
Yeah, but, it's just sign of the times, I guess.
So when you all were playing on Bramwell Hill and all that was going on, when did the Goins brothers come along?
Not until we got married in 1964.
So y'all were in school together, but
we went to school with Donnie, Betty's husband, all through school.
Yeah, all through school.
Well, Roger was older, so he left school in the 10th grade or something. So I really didn't meet him until Don got married.
Graduated high school. I was valedictorian. We graduated in June, and we got married in November. At that time, Vietnam War was raging, and all these young single guys were going to be drafted. And I was worried, and Donnie was worried he was going to be drafted because he was very, very eligible. And like 2 days after we got married, he got his certificate that he was going to be drafted.
So if he hadn't been married, he would have had to go to Vietnam.
Yep.
And so Roger, was he on the verge of getting drafted too?
No, he was in a car wreck when he was younger, so he had injuries from that, so he didn't qualify. I think they wasn't eligible.
So you got married in 64. And when did you all get 66?
Well, actually, it had been our anniversary, February the 20th.
Yeah.
66, yeah.
Yeah. Yesterday.
Yeah.
So you both got married and then moved down to town of Bramwell, off of Bramwell Hill?
Well, no, not right off. I lived up on Bramwell Hill for a while in another house, and she lived.
I lived when we first got married, we moved to Bluefield, Virginia, lived there a short period of time, and then we moved it to not Sand Lake, Lord Lake Road, back up again the next to Holler, beautiful old farm. It was a beautiful house, but it was the last house in that road, and by that time Selena was born, and it was crazy, and so Bonnie and Roger needed to buy a stove. Their stove had gone out, and there was an ad in the newspaper. Somebody in Bramwell was selling a stove. So we were all together, and we said, okay, let's go see about it. And it was at Marie Tabor's and Knocker's house. And he said, well, why are you at it? I got a house to sell. So we kind of looked at each other, and we said, well, let's go look at it. And it was pretty bad.
It was a double house.
It was a house that had been split so that they could rent part of it for Miss Hill. And so we kind of looked at each other and said, well, okay, let's give it a try. So that's when we moved in 68.
You said you lived in the house together for 4 years, and then you got to move over to your own house.
Yeah, there's a house in between us. Yeah, I just moved up the street.
So, and then you started having kids, and
we goes with that. You was a house in between.
Yes. Yeah. I got to grow up in between Betty and Bonnie.
Yeah.
I had for 27 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. For sure. Or I think our street felt more like family.
Yeah, but
just neighbors.
I think we reenacted what we grew up with on Bramwell Hill. When we moved out on Simmons Street, there were a lot of kids. And so the kids played all the time. They just played. Rough and tumble sometimes, but a lot of fun times for our kids when they were growing up. And I think we emulated that from when we grew up to have that for those kids too.
I didn't realize it at the time. I just thought that's how everybody grew up, but sitting on each other's porches and for, everybody just community together just on that street. That wasn't even the whole town. That was just
every street. Yeah.
That sit on porch and talked and
I think I told you that your dad always after the street fair, your dad would come over and sit on our porch with some other people of the Kiwanis Club. They'd sit and work out any problems they had from the street fair or figure out what to do for the next year or just whatever.
Yeah, and I guess y'all volunteered to do stuff at the street fair too. I know.
I did. She did. I didn't.
Donnie was a member of the Kiwanis Club. So, when you interview him, he'll tell you all about that. But as a wife of the Kiwanis Club member, the wives were expected to do things. It was never stated. It was just something that you did. The Kiwanis wives cooked meals for the Kiwanis Club members, and they rotated. And so I think the kitchens for the street fair came out of that group of women. And I know Marie Tabor was in charge of one kitchen for the street fair, and was it Eleanor Tabor? And both of those are Kiwanis wives or widows. And so that's where that came from.
Did you get to meet Dolly Parton or Loretta Lynn or anybody like that?
We saw.
You just got to see the concert.
Not necessarily met them, but we saw them, yeah. My husband did. Saw that, he was actively involved with your dad and with others. And so they were involved, yeah. Yeah. But we were busy working. Kiwanis wives worked a lot. I mean, there was an old service station where the parking lot is now. There was a service station. It was called Wide Awake Station, first of all, Poteet and Williams service station. And so one year, the Kiwanis wives went in and made a sort of a restaurant-type thing in the empty building. And we served food like brown beans and cornbread or baked spaghetti or something.
And you made dresses. I've seen that picture. Was it y'all had these long country-looking dresses?
Yep, we did. That's where I was one year when Dolly Parton was here.
Mm-hmm. So you were probably in there with the food and probably couldn't get out from the street scene.
Had her tell you, we stepped out and we were at that building, and there's this little black guy. He's real little, and all I can remember, his big eyes looking up at me, because we were really crushed in with so many people. And I could see he was a little bit afraid. And I just put my arm around him. I says, "You're okay." But I could still see his big eyes looking up at me like, "Help me, I don't know any of these people." Or
that big, tight crowd, everybody crammed in.
Yeah, because people were climbing on telephone poles and everything, and on roofs.
And in the Pence building, they were hanging out
windows. Yep, they sure were. It brought an excitement into the town that hasn't been for a long time. And then another thing, of course, is the tour of homes that started in 1983. And so I think it's really important that we recognize those entities that started that. And the tour of homes still continues today after all of these years, when Catherine Barringer said, "Who in the name of John would want to come into our houses?" And so we're still doing that. And the street fair, I know people who didn't live here during that time don't understand what the sense of community it really was. But it wasn't just a carnival. It was a community event. And I think that's why so many people loved it so much. And then another thing that the theater group has done, and I get asked, and I'm sure anybody else that's part of the theater, were the plays that we did for almost 20 years, that people really want to do it again. They want to come back to Bramwell. They want to enjoy those evenings that they spent in Bramwell, where they ate at the corner shop and they had a fun play to be a part of. So there are all kinds of opportunities that have been done in the past that we can look at and maybe challenge ourselves to move forward with some new ideas.